amazing panelists who are going to chat with us today. Because we only have 30 minutes, I thought I would kind of tee up a question for everyone, allow them to introduce themselves, answer the question, and maybe give us like a really cool practical piece of advice from their industry. So we're going to start with Katie. Tell us, what are some of the key trends you're seeing in how retail investors and traders are engaging in the markets today compared to a few years ago?
Cool. Well, to quickly introduce myself, my name is Katie Perry. If you came here for the artist, you came to the wrong place. I am the head of marketing at Stakeholder Labs, which is an IR software company. We also co-produce a podcast with Morning Brew called After Earnings, where we interview public company executives. Before this, I was at public.com, which is a retail investing app, and I was the first head of marketing there. I was there about 4 years through all of the meme stock craziness, so I've had a front row seat to these changing behaviors. And yeah, I think it's what we've all seen and experienced in our own day-to-day of just the normalization and the mainstreamification of trading and investing. I know when I started working in this industry a few years ago, none of my friends were doing active investing. Maybe they had mutual funds or 401ks, but it was really a niche thing. And all of a sudden, in the last few years, I'm getting girlfriends sending me, hey, check out this stock I found, and it's awesome. And so I think the biggest thing is just for platforms, I think the takeaway is, don't assume you make an ass out of you and me. Don't assume that the thing you built for historically is who the new audience could be. I think it's changing a lot. So if you typically build for traders or a certain demo, you can think about what's out there, because there's a lot of interest beyond the growth pockets that you've already leveraged. And we're seeing this across a lot of things. It's not just about people downloading apps and trading. It's also people are really into the research side. They're on Reddit, but there's all these Gen AI tools they're using.
They're on stock.
They're on stock twits all the time. Yeah, and so they're listening to earnings calls, which I know you'll touch on. And so, yeah, thinking outside of who your current users are, and obviously you're going to build for them, but there's a whole world of people out there getting into this, and there's new opportunities to reach those people.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. Let's start with Abdul then. As the financial landscape continues to evolve, what do you see as the biggest challenges in attracting and retaining the next gen of market participants?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to just quickly take a minute to introduce Abdul Zohaibir from sensormarket.com. So again, we are a fintech platform. We work with institutional users and retail users. We are pretty much first in the market to have 100 plus pre-built option strategies, making it easier, intuitive, and connecting with the brokerage firm like Trader Brokerage, TradeStation, and execute the trade. Thank you, Dan. All right. So that's a quick introduction, but I'm going to lay out, I think, to your answering a question, right? I want to start with one of the quote, right? In the world of fintech, we are not just disrupting industries, we are reimagining the possibilities. I think this has been going around. The quote has been going for a few years. The exact pinpoint of when exactly it started is unknown, but it kind of deeply resonates now with what we face today. The financial landscape, like we were talking about, is changing or evolving faster than ever, because of the new generation which is coming in. And these are the new generation who have been brought up with like instant data, personalization, and they always want that seamless experience. They also been fed with lot of overwhelming financial data and lot of data. So they're looking at a tool and the technology where they can kind of trust on that. It has to be seamless experience for it. So that's where they are tending towards the next generation of market participants, which is pretty much Gen Z, right? They're not just demanding for tools, but what they want is empowerment. With technology that doesn't work, but naturally it becomes an extension of the financial journey. One other thing which really goes well, Mark Weinzer puts this very nicely. The most successful technology is invisible. It becomes woven into the fabrics of everyday life. I think that's kind of the striking balance as a platform company where we strike towards, where we want to like engage the new generation of participants and user base. Right? I'm going to come back and answer a few follow-ups over there, but again, just to like kind of like summarize over here, right? Again, the financial world is at a crossroad. We can overwhelm with a lot of data, or we can empower with the tools which makes them feel intuitive, intelligent, and seamless, which is pretty much like invisible. It should be right there for them.
Beautiful. If you could leave anyone, if you could leave the audience with a quick kind of like note of advice, what would you give them as far as what you've learned? Yeah, with retail traders.
I don't know, like, again, it depends on the generation, right? Where they want to come. Everybody is looking for that seamless interaction. The technology and the tool is just like your helping hand. But the data is there. But how do you make that meaningful data is where we as a platform company has to step up and get there. Even AI is there, data is there. I know we can talk about AI probably in the next question, but how do we make that meaningful insight? It could be for a new user, it could be for an intermediate user, or somebody from institutional hedge fund managing like 30 million funds. The time is of an essence. Like, you bring all the data and then you take them 2 steps forward. The AI is not going to do it, but you are creating that experience and the technology right there at the fingertips.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Mike. The use of AI and data analytics is becoming more prevalent in financial services. How can these technologies be leveraged to empower retail investors to make more informed and confident decisions?
What's AI? I've not heard of this term.
I don't know. Does anybody know what AI is? Raise your hand.
No, I'm just kidding. So my name is Mike Bazzello. I'm head of product and engineering at StockTwits. If you're not familiar, we're one of the largest social networks for investors and traders. We're approaching 10 million registered users. We do hundreds of thousands of messages a day. So I'm going to come at it from a community angle. I think there's tons of applications on AI. You guys have probably heard all day long and for the last year. I look at it from like a connection perspective. So if I think about AI and community, I'll give you an analogy, right? So we're having this conversation up on the stage, all sharing insights here. Somebody's going to walk through that door late. We're not going to shame them, but they're going to come in unprepared. They don't know what's going on in this conversation. All this, conversation has happened without them understanding. So are they likely to participate if there are questions at the end? Probably not. So from StockTwits' perspective, what we think is really interesting is being able to summarize the conversation for our users. And in turn, what we think is you're really kind of allowing them to belong in the room, right? And that's what AI is doing. It's kind of even the playing field again by giving people the ability to belong and find connection. So practical application of this is on StockTwits. If you go to the Tesla stream, there could be thousands of messages in the last hour. If I go to that stream, that real-time conversation, I'm going to have a hard time digesting it. What if we can use AI to extract the most important pieces of that conversation, make it very easy to digest? Then you're more likely to get involved and engage. So from our perspective, again, there's a lot of applications, but we're really excited about that ability to get somebody engaged through the conversation.
Love it. What's like a practical piece of advice you think you could give as a takeaway for the audience?
I guess practical would be go to where your users are and what they're doing. So I think from our perspective, you should be trying to deliver value to your users in a way that they would expect it versus forcing something upon them. So at StockTwits, that's creating content that's very digestible, engaging, and then through that, adding in clean data and insights just makes it very easy for somebody to get involved. So I think you just got to know who you are and your DNA and, double down on that. And that's something we've learned at StockTwits over the last 15 years.
Very cool. Thank you. All right, Trent. Many platforms have found success in building vibrant online communities around investing and trading. What strategies have you found most effective in fostering meaningful engagement among your user base?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One thing I think I'm pretty well versed on. So for those that don't know, Bull Rush is the first ever paid entry trading competition platform where users from around the world compete in daily trading competitions, trivia competitions, and other challenges for cash prizes. Our entire platform is just a gamified platform. It is literally built to drive user engagement. And so what we do is we drive user engagement through those competitions and then give them a place to go and have that conversation and have that Discord. So currently we drive users into the Discord platform. And what we see a lot of is a lot of interactions, probably similar to StockTwits, where people are coming in, they're sharing trade ideas. There's a lot of banter. I'm sure we all play fantasy sports, or a lot of us do, where you play with your high school buddies, you're talking crap back and forth with them. We see a lot of that inside of our community. And so to drive the engagement on our side, what we specifically do is give them that reason to start that conversation, whether it is our daily trivia question, whether they're discussing, hey, how difficult is this, or how easy it was to do it, whether it's a competition where they're, trying to compete to be the highest, and, you miss out just on that prize, and the person in front of you is talking smack back down to you. And then, of course, you go and you ask them, hey, how did you win? How did you actually, beat me in this competition? And they'll share the trade ideas. So we see a lot of exchanges of information that way as well.
Love it. How about a practical piece of advice?
Yeah, so I would say gamify it. I think Katie mentioned, her friends are now asking her, hey, about the stock, since COVID. And the way that people learn these days is a lot different than the way that probably our parents grew up learning. And the type of investor that is out there, or the trader, is a much different. No longer do we have the person that just paid $75 to enter a stock and they're buying and holding forever. They're much more engaged. They want to be in and out of the market every day. And so giving them a gamified reason to come back and continue to trade would be the approach that I would take.
Love it.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Building on that, I think there's a lot to learn from consumer apps. So I think sometimes in your industry, you tend to look to peers. Oh, what are they doing? What are they doing? And historically in fintech, that's happened. And I think what you're seeing is, I think it was 1957 when the S&P was started, 5% of people held stocks, and now 60% do. It's like a totally different demo. Everyone has a fintech app on their phone. And so if you're looking for inspiration, whether it's content or features, UX, looking to other platforms outside of fintech could be very helpful, because it's not like it used to be with the screens and the monitors, and that's the only way people are engaging with this stuff. They're doing it while they're at drinks with their friends or over the weekend from their phone. So I think there's actually a lot to learn outside this industry, and it may be good to look there for inspiration too.
So I'm curious, Michael, like ours, it's 80% of our user base is actually on mobile phones. What are StockTwits?
Yeah, ours is like 65% mobile. Actually, most of our audience comes through web, but the most engaged users are our iOS, Android app by far. It's like crazy engagement on app.
Yeah, and I think it's just how we grew up. We all have phones these days, and so it's natural. We're not going to be sitting at a computer screen all day, to your point, Katie.
Yeah. Trent, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing to drive ongoing engagement. You're giving me some practical examples earlier that I thought were really cool. So I'd love for you to share those.
Yeah, good question. So again, it's all gamified. So experience points, promotional credits. One of the ones that we talked about specifically was our daily trivia question, where we want people to come back in every single day into our platform. And so the way that we do that is we put a daily trivia question that they come in and answer. It's always related around trading. And then if they get 20 of those correct a month, we then go and put them into one of the paid entry competitions. And so it just gives people the reason to come back into our platform. And then, of course, it sparks that dialogue in our chat communities where people are talking specifically about that question and how difficult it was or how easy it was to answer.
And can I add something too? So we didn't meet each other before, and we're moving into gamification too on StockTwits. It's slightly different, not paid, but more from like a social capital perspective. So we'll allow our users to predict on the platform. You can see who the best traders are, how much they're up, and in turn, those become creators for StockTwits, right? Where I want to follow Trent to figure out, what's he trading or what's he doing. So the premise is very similar. I think we're looking to leverage our communities slightly different, but it's the same idea.
We have the same thing. So we have certificates. So if you win or place top 3 in a competition, you get a certificate. What we see a lot is those users go on social media and they go share those certificates, which obviously is free marketing for us. And so to your point, they're brand ambassadors, even though if they don't know it.
And it's never ending too. So it's just like DraftKings, or you play fantasy sports. Like every week there's a new winner, and that means new creators, and that's a really good thing.
Love it. Yeah. And Mike, tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing when you're hosting your post-earnings virtual sessions. So, retail investors are actually tuning in to learn more about what public companies are up to and forecasting and all the things. So tell us what you're seeing.
How many people have listened to a conference call recently?
Wah, wah.
Pretty small percentage, right? How many people would think a typical millennium audience, that's millennials are on our platform, would listen to conference calls? Not many. However, retail does have an appetite for it. We recently partnered with Quarter and launched live earnings calls on our platform that you can listen to, chat, share your sentiment, get analysis during it. And we've hosted about 5,000 calls, have had 400,000 listeners, and people listen for an average of 7 minutes. So retail really wants to be engaged, and they're engaged differently than we thought. And that's back to your point that it doesn't look the same as it used to look. People are willing to do new things, and they just want to be involved in the market. And they're interested in doing their due diligence and congregating around something very specific. So for us, it's been a really fun product to launch.
Very cool. Yeah, tell us more about how your tech and Stakeholder Labs is kind of going out there, doing all the listening and bringing it back so it's in a digestible format for.
Yeah, on the back of what you were saying, I think the companies are kind of getting that, and they're spicing up their earnings calls. So they're not all bad. I don't know if you guys heard the Palantir one. Alex Karp is like a maniac, and he was just like dropping like bangers. It was like the most out of pocket.
People love that. They absolutely, it makes them more in love with the company.
And it was a good earnings call. Like he started with like a mic drop, and he was like, I don't even know why we're even here. We did so good. That's obviously an eccentric example, but I know Duolingo had their earnings call. A big piece of their product that they rolled out was this AI coach named Lily. They actually had Lily read part of their earnings call and like her personality. So at Stakeholder Labs, we're working with companies that are leaning in like this, and basically we build tech that allows them to measure their shareholders, understand their behaviors, understand who they are, and understand the best way to reach them. I think the other big thing we're seeing, and there was actually a Wall Street Journal article about this that came out today, was that these companies are going direct to investor, and they're also thinking about AI and how they're using it within their IR teams. So things like, okay, can I use AI to predict what certain communities of investors might ask? You could plug an AI tool into Reddit conversations about a ticker and understand what retail's saying and anticipate that. So I think there's a lot of progress happening, which is good to see on the side of public companies that are really getting that this audience is watching this stuff like TV shows sometimes.
Yeah, love it.
And they're meaningful. I think like retail was just not taken serious for so long, and that's what I look at as the biggest benefit from like the COVID GameStop years is retail's not going anywhere, and they are impactful and meaningful. So I'm very excited by what you're saying too.
Yeah, Abdul, how about anything to layer in from your perspective on AI? Or
Pretty cool. Yeah, right. Again, from the retail perspective, right? Same thing, right? With the new generation, like bringing that fintech influencers, right? Things like this group chat is working really well. So other things, just like for the retail, personalized recommendation and education. How do you want to bring that? The new generation Gen Z is growing up with a lot of data, but they want to kind of like play around real time. They want to have that templates ready, be engaged, ask the questions. So integrating that chat along with like what we have with the pre-built algorithms, right? You're playing with those algorithms, you are visualizing your profit loss potential, especially the option strategies, right? Where things get complicated. But there's a lot of retail customers who is kind of like jumping in, who wants to do trade, but they don't know what is their maximum loss looks like. What could be that potential or the break even. So bringing in that chat with an AI, with the pre-built strategy, with the algorithms are the things which kind of like helping our retail customers. Again, it could be a newbie starting out right for education to learn about the strategies to kind of executing the trade, or it could be somebody who's like expert user, but he wants the data real time. He wants to go with the flow and engage this audience as well to bake that into a meaningful data that the hedge fund manager in this particular case, if I have to refer, right, like which we had worked with, makes the data more meaningful and then kind of like place a trade.
Right, love it. Mike, tell us any misconceptions out there about the retail investor. I'm sure you see a lot on StockTwits and.
I mean, some are true, right? I think like the YOLO traders are real, and honestly, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, hey, I want to turn my 500 into 500,000. But I think the misconceptions are that they're not sophisticated or they're not leveling up every year. What we see is the more tools you give them, they want to use them if they're easy to use.
Right.
So again, I think they're quite sophisticated. And again, it's like anything. There's tiers of it, right? Like the top 1% are like crazy good. And then bunch in the middle, and then there's the newcomers coming in. But we just don't want people to burn out, right? So we think it's really important to give them tools so they don't just burn out. They come in and they churn, right? You want to empower them. So.
Hey, Trent, you came out of the gates blazing with growing your user base. Tell us how you did that and maybe some practical kind of takeaways from that process.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thankfully, we have a good marketing team. So it was not me that grew that. But yeah, so to your point, we launched 4 months ago and we put 31,000 users on the platform, and we get anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 daily active users currently. What we did was we took a good approach in the sense that we partnered with a lot of influencers in the space where we got them to go and help promote our services in exchange for either paying them directly or giving them free entry into the paid competitions. And we did that combined with our paid marketing, which we tend to focus on Meta. But at the root of it, we gave them a product that they actually wanted. So very good user experience. I think we talked backstage where we've already retooled our marketing message once, and we retooled our dashboard, our front end another time to really make sure that it's a easy to use platform that people can come in, they can understand right away, that keeps them wanting to come back every single day. And so it's not just about getting them in there, it's about keeping them active and wanting to come back.
Very cool. Katie, so you do a lot of awesome interviews on your podcast. Tell us a little bit about maybe anything you gathered from your interactions with CEOs out there on their perspective of retail.
Ooh. Yeah, so there's a lot of examples. Oh, I'll back up. So Stakeholder Labs co-produces a podcast called After Earnings. It is what it sounds like. Executives go on an earnings call, and then they'll come on the podcast and talk to us for 30, 45 minutes. And you'll really get the nuance behind some of the moves they made. Why was the cash this way, or what was this line item? And they can really dig into those updates and announcements. But the part I love about them is you kind of get to know the executives as people. So a couple examples that just stand out. One would be the CEO of Elf Beauty, cosmetics brand. They've had 23 consecutive quarters of 20% growth. Like, they're absolutely ripping. And this guy's knowledge of the product SKUs was insane. Like, I was like in jest, like, what's your skincare routine? And he just rattled off like 17 things. And those are the things you get in like hearing from the executives. There was another example, I believe it was Kava, and the CEO was saying that for 2 years before the IPO, they were doing earnings internally, like even with mock calls to like prep themselves. Another example would be the Monday.com CFO. We chatted after, and he's talking about how he really preps for these podcasts, and he put a lot of time into it. And it's like that kind of insight you get from hearing directly from the executives, that it might not be the reason you decide to invest in something, but there's these intangible moments where you're like, I like that person, or oh, this person really knows their product. And I think that's the most interesting thing you get when your executives are out there more. And I think we're used to seeing CEOs out there, especially the same CEOs. I know Mark Zuckerberg glow up and he's wearing these crazy clothes and everyone looks at that one. But there's also like a lot of CFOs that are on the circuit now. Yeah. And I almost think that part of being a CFO these days is you kind of have to be out there. And for investors, I think it's interesting to pay attention to like the story behind the story. Right. And that's what we try to uncover on the show.
Love it.
And you can listen to all the episodes at afterearnings.com.
Perfect.
And Katie, is so interesting. Elf, when they did their earnings call, they had like banging music at the beginning, and everybody on StockTwits was like, this is fucking awesome. Like, I love this. And I think the companies that are figuring out how to like hook their claws in retail and make them like dedicated, hardcore, investors in them is a big deal. So
yeah,
like,
NVIDIA has, actually watch parties. Have you guys read about this? Thoughts on that? The next generation of investors, is it kind of like going to see your favorite band? Like, our earnings call is going to be like,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. NVIDIA Day for us is like a huge thing. Our content team, we just blow it out of the water, gear, everything. It's like the most important thing happening. This is like going to be crazy tomorrow. So
yeah. Hear a lot of themes about just like humanizing the process. And when, people talk about retail investors, it feels like they're talking about everyday people, which they are, right? So I always find it interesting, kind of like dig into the minds because it's always institution. But we are all retail investors. 1 in 3 Americans is a retail investor. They're choosing to buy the brands that they love and own. So I'm curious, this can be for anyone. what's your favorite stock to own, and what are your thoughts on, and why did you choose to invest in that company from a retail perspective?
Goat coin. You guys familiar with goat coin?
Oh my gosh, goats again.
No, explain.
No, I'm just kidding. Not financial advice. I just mean like if anybody knows anything about like the crazy crypto world, pump.fun.
Yeah.
My
My brother told me to buy Floki Inu, which is a Dogecoin.
There you go,
derivative.
Floki. Love Floki.
And now Floki's up 500%. That's not advice either. My brother's an idiot, but apparently not.
Yeah.
I need to think more about what
Well,
mine
the
is.
crypto
though.
side of things is interesting because you were elaborating on this, but I thought was really interesting is that like all of the buzz around crypto has really lent itself to this narrative around retail investing too. So tell us more about your mindset on that and what you've seen.
Yeah, no, that's true. So before crypto really entered the space, you see every other industry really gamifying what they do. You know, kids these days learn how to type via a game. You know, Fortune 500 companies use games inside their corporate learning and education. You know, Duolingo, like every single app has some sort of gaming element embedded into it. But we didn't really ever see that in the investing or trading community until cryptos came into the space. And then cryptos, I would say, were the first ones to start with the leaderboard functionality where you have the best crypto traders and then you want to go and be at the top of that leaderboard so you can get some, you know, social clout. And so overall, you know, just the gamification side of things. And I think that industry is going to continue, whether it's StockTwits going into gamified, whether it's Bull Rush doing into paid entry competitions and gamifying it. I think crypto just jump-started that for the rest of us, and we are now, you know, chasing to play catch-up on our side of the industry.
Gamers became traders. Like it's
Exactly
so
what it is.
natural.
I
yeah.
mean, everybody, you know, probably in this room has played a video game at some point in their life. And if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, chances are you played either, you know, Nintendo or Sega Genesis, and it just is carried on to this day.
Love it.
So Michael, tell me more, like the earnings call in the community, the fintech, right, especially the influencers coming in. It was a big hit. What's coming up next?
It's competitions, gamification for us. It's huge. Yeah,
next.
we're gonna
When is that getting launched?
very soon. No, early next year. Early next year. Yeah, I'm gonna talk to Trent, but yeah, early next year.
Love it. You heard it here first. All right, with 30 seconds left, any last thoughts? Anyone?
Does anyone have a stock they want to shout out?
No, everyone totally dodged
I
that.
feel like nobody
question.
wants to give financial advice just so we don't get in trouble
I
from
feel
our
like
lawyers.
I have one, but I
My
actually
compliance
haven't.
officer is shaking his head. It's like,
Hey,
nah.
tell us.
Who's shaking their head? Oh, back.
My compliance officer.
Oh,
is
your
sitting right down
compliance.
there.
Oh, not mine.
He's
Okay.
telling me not to do.
I like this. I like the stocks of like companies that like it's something you don't think of every day, and it's not like the Nvidia. It's like something really boring, like waste management. Like I love. I don't know what that genre is called, but like I like a John Deere.
Called garbage.
I like.
Waste management.
Oh, I mean, again, I haven't looked at the chart. But yeah, I recently learned that Utz Pretzels is publicly traded. Like this is why it's fun to get into this stuff because all of these random brands have public businesses.